Hello and good morning. I'm Jamey from Stonemaier Games, and this is the first live cast of August 2025. I'm excited to spend the next hour with you. You can ask me anything you want other than spoiler questions. I will skip those, but anything else, you're welcome to ask me, and I'm happy to talk about it on today's podcast. Today's live cast. Actually, I said podcast because this is Wednesday, August 6th. This Friday, August 8th, my podcast co-host and I, Mitchell, we have a podcast called the Positively Board Gaming Podcast that we typically record on Fridays at 3:30 Central Time. We are going to do, for episode 21, we're going to do a live podcast. So I'm going to put it on YouTube. I probably won't put it on Facebook, but I'll put it on YouTube live. So if you want to join us on Friday at 3:30 for around maybe a half hour, it might go a little bit long because it's our first and only live cast. Feel free to join us Friday at 3:30 Central Time. Live podcast with Jamey and Mitchell. I know normally you get to see me on Wednesday, but it'll be hopefully fun for you to chat live with Mitchell. And we talk about things that we're excited about in the board gaming hobby. And we also talk about treats of the day and random other topics. We'll talk about anything really, but we do try to at least fit some positive, enthusiastic board game related topic in there. So join us this Friday if you want to be a part of that live podcast. We will do it live, and then it'll kind of go out on all the regular podcast areas the following Thursday when we normally post the live cast. Post the podcast, sorry. Melissa says, is that in lieu of the Thursday stream? This Thursday, there will be episode 20 of the podcast as normal. This is episode 21, which we'll record on Friday live with you, and then we'll post it the following Thursday as we normally post the podcast. Livecast podcast. I'm mixing those two up, especially since this will be a live podcast. Chad has the other big question of the day. He says, how is my little visit to Gen Con? Did you get your fill for the next couple of years? So I did indeed go to Gen Con on Friday. I wasn't really planning to go, but the weather was really nice. Usually when Gen Con is happening, this is a big convention in Indianapolis. It's kind of a slower couple of days. Otherwise, for those of us who like to work behind the scenes. And so I was like, I'm just going to go for it. And I'll just go for a day. It's a 4-hour drive from St. Louis. And so within a single day, I drove to Indianapolis. I hung out at Gen Con for around 5 hours, mostly spending my time in the events area, the Stonemaier Games events area, but also visiting the booth a few times. And then I drove home back to St. Louis. I was home by around 9:30. So it was really neat. It was really, really neat. I mean, Gen Con itself is a really interesting experience. I say interesting because it can mean different things to different people. It's a lot of people. There's a lot of things calling for your attention. And that goes for anybody, any attendee of Gen Con. There are lots of things to look at and do and see and people to talk to. And it's a lot for me. It's overwhelming for me. It is not I can't say it is not my preferred way to go to a convention. I'd rather just sit down and play games for 4 days if I'm going to a convention. That's what I do at Geekway to the West. However, it's really neat to see that much enthusiasm and excitement for the board game hobby and the tabletop hobby in general. Tabletop role-playing games are there too. It's invigorating almost to see that many people that excited about board games. And in particular this year, this is the first year in a long time, with maybe the exception of Expeditions, that I have personally had a game that I have designed that is kind of our featured summer game, and that is Vantage. Over the past few years, we've featured other designers, and so I'm not really needed at Gen Con. I want the spotlight to be on those designers. But this year, we have Vantage, and it was really, really neat for me personally to see the amount of excitement for Vantage. In the events area, people were not just learning Vantage for like a little quick taste, and some people were doing that, but other people were playing full 2 to 3 hour sessions of Vantage in the midst of tens of thousands of people, and they were fully focused on the game, which was really, really neat to see. The booth sold a lot of copies of Vantage to a lot of people who were hoping to get it a little bit before the retail release. It was just really neat to see. And I really appreciate everyone who was involved in pulling the Stonemaier Games stuff together, because it's a lot of work. There's Meeple Source. There's my coworkers, Dave and Alex. There's the demo team. All these amazing, they're not quite volunteers because they're compensated. We'll call them the demo team, but they were willing to give a lot of their time and talent and energy to people to welcome people into the Stonemaier Games area. And everyone who stopped by to say hi and to experience what we were there to share for Stonemaier Games. Also, the designers. There are some designers. I got to hang out with Elizabeth Hargrave for a little bit. Michael and David, those are the designers of Wingspan. Mahir, who is one of the co-designers of Viticulture World. It was really neat to see all of them. I also ran into one of the Wingspan fan artists who gave me this mute swan. And one of the vendors, this will be my treat of the day, one of our, I believe this came from Let's Play Games, our distributor and warehouse, or one of our distributors in our warehouse in Australia. They brought some chocolate for me, some chocolate frogs from Australia. So that'll be my chocolate treat of the day. I think I've covered, I'm happy to answer other questions about Gen Con, but really it was just neat for me to be a part of that energy for 5 hours and then recharge on the way home. Galaxy Conqueror says, how did you and Mitchell meet? I've always been curious. Mitchell, how did we originally meet? We've never met in person, as is the case with many of my online friendships. I think maybe at one point he reached out to me to say hi, but I don't really know. I don't remember exactly how it happened. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. It's been a couple of years. It's been probably around 5 years since we started chatting every now and then. And he's just a really warm, welcoming person. It's neat that he has the little celebrity side of it, that where he was in, he's been in movies. He's a voice of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But he's also just a warm, that aside, like none of that would matter because he's just a really warm, kind person. And I'm fortunate to call him a friend. And I look forward to hopefully actually meeting him and playing games with him in person someday as well. Ian says, I've appreciated your mentions of intrinsic motivation in Vantage. What's informed your thinking about intrinsic motivation? For me, it started with Daniel Pink's book, Drive. I haven't made the connection to Drive, but I do love that book. Dan Pink, I'm not sure what he goes by, Daniel Pink. He has maybe a few great TED Talks about motivation, behavioral psychology. I find that stuff really interesting. So I think probably my interest in intrinsic motivation has had some layers over the years. For Vantage in particular, I know a lot of it did come from Breath of the Wild. The idea that Breath of the Wild lets players decide what's important to them, what they want to do, how they want to do it, and where they want to go at any given time. And the game says, sure, you can do that. Yeah, go do it. Yeah, turn left instead of going right. Chop down that tree instead of burning it, or run away from this monster instead of fighting it. I like the idea that the game says, do what is compelling to you and what is satisfying to you, and that is a valid thing to do. And so I would say the toughest part, or one of the toughest parts about designing Vantage, was finding the right balance between intrinsic motivations and extrinsic motivations, which would be like the mission, or if you find a destiny, or if you get a quest along the way. That's the game saying, here's your motivations. Here's the things that you can be doing. But I try to make it very clear throughout the game that you can choose to ignore those things. Those things are important if you want them to be important. And I have played many games of Vantage where I've completely ignored those things. I've also played some games of Vantage where I have used the mission or a destiny as part of the story, as part of my story, or part of what I've decided is important to me. Garrett says, how many copies of Vantage would you say you signed at Gen Con? It's kind of a blur. I would say maybe around 100 copies. In total, we sold, I think it's okay for me to say this, in total we sold 1,300 copies of Vantage at Gen Con. And when I say we, it means our vendor partner, MeepleSource, sold those copies. They're our vendor partner at Gen Con, but we're partners with them. We're doing that together. So what is that? Around 7% of the copies sold at Gen Con were maybe signed by me. I signed a bunch of copies of Vantage, and it was really neat to have people come by and ask me to do that. I'm always honored to do that. Aaron can relate to the overwhelming nature of Gen Con. Yeah, it's a lot. It's just it's a lot. There's a lot to see and do. There's a lot of people. If you're watching this and you've never attended a game convention, I'm glad conventions like Gen Con exist, these exhibition style conventions, and you can play games at Gen Con for sure. But I hope you know that there are also lots of other smaller regional conventions that are much more focused on playing games. Like that is the core focus. 95% of those conventions is just go play games with awesome people for 3 to 4 days. So if you ever want to find some conventions like that, look at the play and win list that we maintain at Stonemaier Games. We donate a lot of games to play and win sections at conventions. And the types of conventions that have play and win sections are typically these smaller regional conventions, not these conventions where like you might see photos of Gen Con of like hundreds of people, maybe even thousands of people waiting to get into the exhibition hall first, which is exciting and great. That enthusiasm is great, but it's also like, I don't want to be in that crowd. I want to be off to the side, playing a game with wonderful people. Mr. Bird 5 says, most of the extensions for Wingspan include an unbelievable number of new bird cards. It is impressive how many bird cards Elizabeth has designed. And was curious if there's a plan for Antarctica to have the same number or if it will have to be a small pack. So we have 3 expansions remaining for Wingspan. I haven't said the order in which they're happening, but the plan is for every continent to have to be covered by Wingspan. So we have Antarctica, we have South America, Central South America, and we have Africa. And you were absolutely right about Antarctica, that there are fewer birds there. So if I think it's like 42 species of penguins and puffins there. So you're right that I think based on the number of birds that are available for us to cover there will be fewer cards in that pack. But we'll see. The Grove, I'm glad you're commenting, The Grove. I follow I subscribe to your YouTube channel. I think I follow you on Instagram as well. I am curious where the name The Grove comes from, if you don't mind answering. In St. Louis here, we have an area, a neighborhood of town called The Grove. And I'm wondering if that is the reference. It's probably not. I think the odds are that you're in that specific neighborhood are very small. But what is the story behind The Grove? I'd love to know about that. Awesome. Aaron, feel free to give a shout out to your store name and where it's located if you'd like people to know. But we are actively sending our copies of Vantage to retailers right now because the local retail release for Vantage is next Friday. It's only 9 days away now. Next Friday, August 15th, is the worldwide local store release for Vantage. And I guess just in case people are curious, are the retail copies the same as the copies that you buy from the Stonemaier Games web store? And the answer is yes, they are. We've just made one version of Vantage available worldwide. I have another thing to say about Vantage, but I'm already behind on comments a little bit. So I'll go through some more questions a little bit. Austin says, I'm glad you and Stonemaier Games have a strong anti-AI stance to support human artists. And that is true. Generative AI, both in terms of the written content and visual art, I don't use it at all. We don't use it at all at Stonemaier Games. Austin says, for a prototype submission, however, is AI artwork something you would consider acceptable? If you want to give us a little taste of how you're picturing your world in a prototype, I'm fine with that. I understand that. That's you're not trying to pass someone else's work as your own. You're not trying to profit from someone else's work. It is something that I don't do for our prototypes, but I understand if a game submission has AI generated art for the sole purpose of a prototype. Melissa says, how do you join the demo team at Gen Con? So Melissa, that's a good question. Every now and then in the ambassador newsletter, I'll mention that we're looking for helpers at a big convention. It's usually Gen Con and Essen Spiel. And so it's in our ambassador newsletter if you subscribe to that. Your inner child says, what do I listen to while we're road tripping? I listen to a lot of podcasts on the road trip. I think I got through around maybe close to 20 different episodes of podcasts on this trip to and from Indianapolis for Gen Con. And I wrote about this recently, but I highly recommend for anyone who's looking for a good podcast app, I recommend the app called Overcast. It's extremely affordable. It's almost the same cost as what Spotify was on a monthly basis. And it has some really cool features and it's really easy to use. That's called Overcast. And it's also free. You can just use it for free if you don't want to pay anything. Jennifer says, am I returning to Gen Con next year? I don't know, Jennifer. It was particularly special for me to do it for Vantage because that was our big summer release. I might do a little visit like I did this year in the future. If I personally have a game that I designed that is our big summer release. So we'll see. I really honestly don't know at this point. I honestly didn't know about this past week until the weather was good on Friday, and I was like, I'll go for it. But what I will do next year, Jennifer, if I do decide to attend, is I will share it on social media. I should have said something on social media for people who wanted to stop by to say hi, couldn't know about it. That's on me. I wasn't trying to be sneaky about it. It just in the morning I was kind of just focused on getting to Gen Con. Thundercat Loft says, when developing a game, do you get bored of playing it over and over? Also, do you feel like you don't get to enjoy the game the same way others do? It's a good question. I mean, there are times where I'm hesitant to really say burned out, but close to it after I have played it over and over again. Sometimes I need to take little breaks, and sometimes the break between sending the files to the printer and getting the pre-production copy is really good. That's a really, really nice break to have. If I'm truly getting bored of a game after playing multiple times and teaching multiple times, that is sometimes a sign that I need to make it a better game so I don't get bored of it. Also, do you feel like you don't get to enjoy the game the same way others do? You know, I was worried about this. I would say rarely, because I try to make our games be very replayable. But I was worried about this with Vantage because it is like every location is in a set place in Vantage. But I found that it's just too big of a game for me to remember everything that's in it. And so I have good knowledge of the world, but I still have a lot of fun exploring Vantage when I play it. Christian says, is Essen next for me? You know, I can't really drive to Essen on a whim, so I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon, but we'll see. Mark says, how deep do the different lores go in Vantage? The lore, the world building, the lore. Even though every game of Vantage is its own thing, there is certainly knowledge that you're gaining about the types of things to look for, the things that you're learning when you talk to people in the world, or especially, yeah, there's a lot that you can learn from talking to people. I would say the lore goes pretty deep in Vantage. It isn't necessary. You don't need to track anything. There's no like blueprints style. That's a digital game that requires you to like really take a lot of notes. You don't have to do that in Vantage. You can take notes if you want to. But I would say there are some stories that, or some lore that compiles every time you play, or oftentimes when you play, that I think adds to the experience of playing Vantage. Chris, I'm sorry I missed you at Gen Con too, but I'm glad we got to chat recently on your podcast, on your YouTube channel, the full 42. Chad says, have you ever received a game submission that was very close to a game that you were already developing? For example, any world exploring games in the last 8 years? A game submission, probably not one that in fact, I know, I can't remember them specifically offhand, but I know that I've gotten some submissions where, in fact, I do know one specifically for Wingspan. I know that someone sent me a version of Wingspan, a fish version of Wingspan, while we were working on Wingspan. And it turned out that it was actually just a reskin. They had just taken the exact same bird cards and put fish on them and fish names, but kept the mechanical text exactly the same. That's what a reskin is, if anyone is trying to use that term correctly. So I reached out to them right away and I said, I really appreciate this. I can tell that you put work into this, even though it was just a reskin. You put a lot of work into this. But I want to be transparent with you, just so you don't think that we have taken this thing that you've made and made it into our own game. And I was just transparent with them and honest. I said, please keep this quiet, but we have been working on a fish version of Wingspan for quite some time. So I just want to let you know that it's already in process, and it's not a reskin where we've completely kind of redesigned a bunch of mechanisms specifically for Wingspan. But I really do appreciate you putting in this time to do this, and you're welcome to share it if you want. Not share that news, but share what you created. So I know that has happened for sure. Chad says, what did you eat at Gen Con? Did you bring your lunch? I stopped at Culver's on the way. There's very little at Culver's that a vegetarian can eat, but that's okay. I got some cheese curds and some pretzel bites. And on the way home, I stopped at a grocery store, and I really wanted healthy food at that point. I didn't eat anything at Gen Con itself. On the way home for dinner, I got some celery, some carrots, and a lot of water. Oh, Melissa want to play and win. Nice. Play and wins are awesome. If anyone doesn't know what a play and win is, the short version is you check out a game from the play and win at a convention, you play it, you put your name in a hat for having played that game, a virtual hat often. And then at the end of the convention, the convention coordinators pull names from a hat and say, hey, if you learned and played this game, you have now won this game that you played and won. Geekway to the West is, I think, one of the first conventions to ever do this. It's a big part of that convention now. Gabe mentions GameCon as a great regional convention. Yeah, feel free to if you have a favorite regional convention, feel free to shout it out today. I'd love to hear your top picks. Damon J says, what about Australia for Wingspan? Australia is already covered in the Oceania expansion for Wingspan. Let's see. Paul says, what are your top podcasts that you listen to? How about Games Overboard, Paul? And that's Paul's podcast. He says, what it could be gaming or non-gaming related. I jump around from a lot of different podcasts. I enjoy quite a few. Here, I'll pull up Overcast right now to see what I'm listening to. Right at this moment, I'm listening to the Decision Space podcast. I'll give 3 just so I don't overwhelm you. I'm listening to Decision Space. A non-gaming one that I've been really enjoying is called Good Hang with comedian Amy Poehler. And then what's one other one I can throw out here? One other gaming one. Let's go with Garrett's Games. The full name is Garrett's Games and Geekiness, but Garrett's Games, I enjoy listening to that one as well. I'm still a little bit behind on comments, but let me jump over to Vantage real quick, because right before this live cast, I sent out a Vantage update, and it includes 2 things that are fairly important if you're playing Vantage. One is a common mistakes and misunderstandings section. I'll show it on the other screen here so you can see it. So here is, sorry, Paul, I'm going to drop your comment for real quick. There we go. So there are a few things that I've heard these are not just frequently asked questions, but things that people seem consistently confused about. And probably the number one thing I will mention here that is a little surprising, but it's completely valid if it's happening to you, is this paragraph right here about skill tokens. If you read this in the Vantage newsletter, if you don't subscribe, it's okay. You can find it on Board Game Geek. You can find it in the Vantage Facebook group. It's also archived on the Vantage page of our website. So this right here, it seems to be that some Vantage players are thinking that they must spend a skill token to perform an action. That is not true. You do not have to spend a skill token to take an action, and that includes the depart action, where people seem the most confused. The depart action is when you depart from your current location and you move in one of the 4 cardinal directions. For that action and for any action, there's nowhere in the instructions that say that you must spend a skill token. It just isn't there. I think I don't know why people are doing it exactly. Other than there is I honestly, I don't know. I can't explain it, but you don't do that. You don't ever have to spend a skill token. The primary purpose, like 99% of the time when you are using skill tokens, you're using them to decrease the cost of an action, and that's completely optional. You're not required to do that. There are also some actions in the game that say, like, if you spend a help token right now, help token, help skill, then you can gain this bonus. But for the most part, skill tokens are used to decrease action costs. You never have to spend a skill token to perform an action, and that includes the depart action. So anyway, if you're playing Vantage, look over these things, because there might be a little thing or a big thing that you are maybe making a mistake about, and it might be making the game much harder, more cumbersome than you might think. Also in this update, I have a bunch of links to things like Rule Pop. Rule Pop has been amazing for little updates here and there. But if you go down below here, I won't go it, but if you scroll below this image in the update, there is a variant that I've added for a mini game involving the spoiler pack in Vantage. This is a mini game that you can find throughout the world. that is related to the spoiler pack. And I don't want to spoil it in case you haven't opened that spoiler pack, but if you have, I have added a variant, a different way to, again, I'm going to be very vague here because I don't want to give away spoilers, but it's basically a faster way to do the thing that you use the spoiler pack for. So if you're finding that you have done it maybe a few times and you're now avoiding that, the use of the spoiler pack, there's a faster way to do it now, because I have personally found when I'm playing Vantage, especially multiplayer, that I am starting to avoid that action because it takes a little bit longer. It breaks the flow of the game a little bit more than I intended. And so I've added a quick variant so to make it a lot faster that I think will allow people to feel comfortable performing that action whenever they want. Yeah. So feel free to check that out if you've opened the spoiler pack. Here's Garrett. Garrett says, I know you like to have 2 designs going at once, but do you ever break that rule? What is the most you've had going at once? Games you were sure you were publishing? It's a good question, Garrett. Right now, let's see. I mean, I have... It's a little hard to answer because currently right now I have like 4 games that I'm working on, and really 5. There's one other one, but they're in different stages of the process. One is I'm completely done with my side of it, other than the project management side of it. One is in playtesting. 2 are just conceptual, and what is the last one? The last one is like kind of in between. Taking it slow on that one. So oftentimes I do have a few irons in the fire in that way. But I think for having 2 that I'm like really focusing on is the max that I can really handle. I don't think I've gone above that. Oh, JC, I'm sorry I missed you at Gen Con 2. JC was only there on Sunday. It's okay to go to Gen Con just for a day if you want. And JC said that he is really enjoying Vantage. Thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate that. Let's see. Danny has a question about getting blocked on my channel. I can't block people on YouTube. Blocking is not a thing that you can do on YouTube. So anyone can post comments on the YouTube channel. Let's see. Steve says, do you personally prefer to design based on a theme and build mechanisms around it, or build a mechanism and build a theme around it? I like to do both at once, Steve. My brainstorming process involves mashing the 2 together. I might certainly have an idea for a theme or an idea for a mechanism, but as soon as I start brainstorming, it just becomes all mashed together. Gage says, I'm developing a game right now, and I'm considering using Panda based on your past praise. Do you still recommend them for new creators? Well, I'd say 2 things here, Gage. One is it's okay to design a game but not want to be the publisher behind it. But it sounds like you are excited about the business side of publishing the game and excited about the game design side of things. If those 2 things are true, then you're on the right track. You're looking for a manufacturer, and I highly recommend Panda to anyone. I have had a wonderful experience working with Panda for the last 13 years, both in terms of their quality, their communication, their prices. I think their prices are maybe like slightly higher than other manufacturers, but I get such great consistency with them. The process works so well, and their communication is so transparent and so excellent, especially once you get in. I think once you, when your Panda gets a lot of game submissions and requests for quotes, but once you have committed to a project with them, I think the communication is really, really excellent. So yeah, I would highly recommend Panda. Charles says, when it says rune type at your location advantage, is there a symbol on the rune to tell you what type the rune is, or is the rune the action type you take at that location? Charles, I don't know if this is the best form to answer that question, because the rune type, so there are skill types in Vantage. Like if you're taking a move action, there's a little icon that says this means move. Is there a symbol on the rune to tell you what type of the rune is, or is the rune the action type that you take on that location? So if you're looking at a Vantage card, Charles, and there's a list of actions on the right that say there's a move, all 6 actions typically are in every location. Those are the action types that you can perform. There's move, engage. There's move, look, engage, help, take, and overpower. And on a location, you can choose one of those actions per location for the entire game. Only one per location. That is the type of action. That is an overpower, destroy action. Destroy is a specific type. overpower is the overarching action / skill type that you're using. I think that's what you're referring to. We don't there are runes in Vantage, but they're used in much more specific ways. I'm talking, these are like just the general 6 action categories in the game, or skill / action categories. Jamey says, do you feel like well, that's a bit of a spoiler, Jamey. Jamey has a question about something in Vantage that are balanced. There are things in Vantage that are very, very powerful. The cards are not balanced against one another in Vantage at all. It is a cooperative game where you're discovering a lot of things of different, like you can find like a little trinket in Vantage, and that's going to be far less useful than what Jamey is mentioning here. Yeah. Night Moose says that played their first game of Vantage. Their 7-year-old daughter was playing and loved it. She completed the Destiny we had found all on her own. That's awesome, and I'm glad you felt the ability to do that, like to have one person focus on the Destiny while other players are doing other things that are important to them. That is completely fine to do in Vantage. Leona mentions a convention called Liericon in Portugal. That would be fun. I have never been to Portugal. See some other conventions mentioned here. Let's see. Christopher mentioned Total Confusion in Massachusetts. And Aaron, did I miss you sharing your store earlier? Feel free to do that if I missed that. Nathan says, I remember there being conversations about the name of the planet in the lead up to Vantage. Is there a way to find out from the sentience the name of the world? The name of the planet is not actually important. It's not ever mentioned by the sentience in Vantage, which I guess is a small spoiler too, that there are people on the planet, because they're just living their lives. They're not walking around talking about Earth or the equivalent name of their planet. Yeah. Jamey says their mistake was using skill tokens after rolling instead of before. Yeah, I can understand that being a mistake. I think it really helps to just go through the action steps on the back of the player aids, and everything is there to help you avoid doing that. But fortunately, that mistake isn't a game breaker. Using if you think that you have to use skill tokens to perform an action, that makes the game really, really difficult. You do not need to use skill tokens to perform any action in Vantage. Let's see. Steve says, if I'm at location 100, and this is another Vantage question, and can move to location 102 to the west, just random example, do I spend 1 skill token or roll a die to move there? Steve, this is what I'm saying. You do not spend a skill token. You do not need to spend a skill token to perform any action. That includes the depart action, which you were talking about. Yeah. You just take an action, you just perform an action. So if it's this is also noted on the back of the player aid, if it is a depart action where the location is listed, then it is a 1 cost move action, which means that you need to roll 1 challenge die. Yeah, and see, maybe since you're here, maybe you can share why that confusion is there. Like, it's not in the rules. It doesn't appear anywhere that you need to spend a skill token. Look at the back of the player aid and let me know where that confusion is coming from the player aid itself. Maybe there's a how to play video that got it wrong or something like that, and that's where people are messing up. I honestly don't know. Moran says, will people who bought the game get the new rewritten updated cards and stickers for storybooks? So yeah, I actually mentioned this in today's Vantage update. We are making, there are a few very minor mistakes in Vantage. That there are a few that impact some storybook entries, which are also corrected on Rule Pop. So if you ever encounter a storybook entry that feels a little weird, just check it on Rule Pop, and you can see if it's correct or incorrect. We are making sticker sheets, and we're also reprinting a few cards. Every card in the game is functional as designed, but there are a few cards that have small mistakes on them. And so we're making a pack of things, and it'll go on our web store whenever it's ready for like $1. We're obviously not trying to make money from that. That is, we'll be losing money on that, but we're making it as a service because we think it's the right thing to do. We're not just going to automatically mail it to everyone because there is a postage cost, but I think ideally we're going to align it with another release, not for Vantage, but of other things. So anyone who wants the update pack can add it to another order. They can also just order it by itself, and we're going to subsidize the shipping, so it's not very expensive. Of course, if it was something that if we had things in the game that made Vantage unplayable, that type of mistake, that's the type of thing where we try to send it to everybody. But that is not the case with the very small errata in Vantage. Diceberg Alley says, in my first game of Vantage, I found myself being very cautious about the actions I performed, as if I were there in real life. Is the world as cruel as my mind imagines it to be? A totally fair question, but no, Vantage is not designed. I did not design Vantage to be a cruel and punishing world. There are difficult things that you can do in Vantage, but it's not. It's designed to. It is designed to reward you, not to punish you. And in fact, the game even rewards you to do more difficult things because that helps the challenge dice refresh more quickly, which means that you open up those challenge dice slots that you were filling up in Vantage. While we're talking about Vantage, I'll throw out one other quick topic. One little idea that I had that I might try if you are intrigued by it. I had the name Destination X in the title here. So Destination X is a reality competition show that I just finished watching. I would recommend it, especially if you enjoy travel, where contestants are essentially traveling through Europe on a bus with blackout windows. And every now and then they get off the bus and they get to look around a little bit at specific locations. And the whole game is trying to figure out where exactly they are at any given time. So oftentimes this means like they'll be in France and they'll be given clues to show that they're in France, and then they'll end up in Paris and they'll be given some clues about the fact that they're in Paris right now, but they won't really know, and they'll try to guess that Paris is their current location. I'm thinking I might try to do this with Vantage. And I'm playing around with some ways to do it, but basically do like a little live show with a few people who want to appear on my YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel at Stonemaier Games. And I would show a Vantage location. And within a few seconds, you need to mark on a map, on a Vantage map, where you think that location is, where you think we are based on that current location. I'm not saying this so you actually study locations or things like that. Just have fun with Vantage, just play it. But if you think that would be fun to do, let me know and I'll give it a try. I'll probably talk about it in the Vantage Facebook group, maybe. That might be the place to do it, to find people who are interested in doing that and giving that a try. Let's see. Did the inspiration for your variant come from any other games? If too spoilery, how many times did you playtest the variant before sharing it with others? I came up with it very recently. I play tested it with myself. I ran it by one of the developers, and it just came from my own mind. It's something I've been thinking about for a little while. The fact that this mini game takes a little bit longer to play than I hoped, and so I just got the game to the table and tested it. Let's see. Tony says, the reason for the confusion from his group's experience is the fact that the action shows the symbol next to the die number. So he thought it meant to spend that token to roll the dice. We're clear now. That makes sense, Tony. I appreciate that. The symbols are there to show you what type of action you're taking, what the skill type is that you could spend to decrease the cost of the action. Yeah, I guess I understand the confusion if someone is kind of like guessing at the rules, but it never appears in the rules that you would have to do that. That's where I'm thrown off by that a little bit. And I think the game would be less functional if those icons weren't there to let you know what type of action it is. Moran says, oh, you already asked that question. Let's see. Justin says, I got to chat with Michael at Gen Con. This is the co-designer of Wingspan. He told me that he enjoyed working with marine biologist consultants for Wingspan. That's right. And we have a few different amazing marine biologist consultants. Have you worked with any expert field consultants for my games? My games tend to take place not in the real world. For viticulture, I did a lot of research, but I don't think I spoke to any viticulturists, for example, while creating viticulture. I think that's the only game that I've designed that is really connected to the real world. So we have people who help out with that sort of information on games based in the real world, like Wingspan and Wingspan. Yeah. Paul says he has Paul just has a comment, a nice comment about game design. He says, speaking of game design, I want to say I admire everyone who is a designer. I have no desire to make a game and wouldn't even know where to begin. My brain just isn't wired that way. And I greatly respect all of you who are creators of these magical boxes of fun. Let's see. I've heard a few people mention this Maricopa Con. Maybe this was you, Morgan, that mentioned it before, but I appreciate you highlighting that convention. Here we go, Aaron. Thank you. I missed this. Aaron's game store is One More Game in northern New Jersey. And Aaron, if you don't recognize this name, Aaron is our solo game panelist on the Stonemaier Games YouTube channel. So if you ever want to meet the person behind the solo game recommendations on our YouTube channel, check out One More Game in northern New Jersey. Tony says some of the cards actually show the action icon next to parts of the illustration. Like if you touch this, you will touch this. If you cut, you will cut this. Is there a reason why all cards don't do this? Yeah, I mean, yes, there is a reason all cards don't do that. The main reason is that I didn't want to clutter the art with a bunch of icons that don't really add value to the game. There are specific locations where different actions lead to specific different parts of that location, whereas on most locations, most of the location actions, if not all of them, are geared towards interacting with one specific thing on that location. That thing is noted in the description of the location. Location might say like, you stumble into a grove and there's a beautiful tree in the middle of the grove. You then know that most, if not all, of the location actions are about that tree. And if we littered that tree with different icons, I don't think that I think that would take away from the game, because especially since the idea of being immersed in this world is that you are looking at things from a first-person perspective. There aren't actually little icons scattered throughout the world, like little things to click on. Instead, the actions for that location might be to climb the tree, to cut down the tree, to ask someone about the tree, things like that. But there are, Tony, you're referring to a very few specific locations where there are a lot of little things to interact with on those locations, and we found it was more clear if the icons were stuck on that location, despite the break in immersion, to help guide players towards specific things. So they saw a specific thing on that location, they would know, okay, that's the thing I'm interested in. Here is the action I need to take to interact with that specific thing. Paul says, might be something. Oh, there's a question, unrelated question. Let's see. Monkey Butler Lab says, if somebody came crashing down to Earth, there would be a scramble to discover them and everything about them. Why are the sentients passive about the arrival of strangers? Maybe they aren't. They're certainly curious. I think you'll find quite a few sentients that are curious about your crash landing. But and you're right. If aliens, and we are in Vantage, we are the aliens. The people are the aliens. If aliens crash landed on Earth, there would be a lot of curiosity about it, but we'd also probably mostly go about our regular lives. Maybe we'd have the news on all the time, but I think if 6 aliens crash landed on Earth, most of the 8 billion people in the world, we're gonna go about our lives, and we'll be curious if we get the chance to meet them, or if we have the chance to learn a little bit more about them. But that's the idea. That and also part of the idea is that even though it's your journey in Vantage, it's your story to tell, that these are people going about their lives. Like, they haven't been waiting for a hero to show up. This is their world, and some aliens just happen to arrive, but they still have their lives to go through. They still have that errand to run that they started to go on. They still have their family to take care of, things like that. Let's see. Alex says, after performing a location action, if we're done with this spot, in the same turn, are we supposed to move to another location, or is that something you can do at the beginning of your new turn? You take 1 action per turn, Alex, unless the action says continue. So if you perform a location action, that's your action for the turn. If on your next turn you then depart to an adjacent location, that's your turn. Which that can be a shorter turn in the game, but it still takes some time because you got to get the location card out. It also gives you like a little break, a little pause to look at that location that you've gained, to start to think about how you might want to interact with it, and to also listen to the other players if you're doing that. If you choose to interact with a location in your grid or the mission on an action on the mission, that's your turn. So an action is your turn in Vantage. This is also shown on the player aid Maybe I should have emphasized a little bit more in the latest update to keep that player aid on the table and just follow the steps one by one. And if you don't see something in those steps, it means that you don't have to do it, i.e. you do not have to spend a skill token to perform an action in Vantage. Ian says they're in for Destination Vantage. Chad says, do you think all the great mini games in Rolling Realms has helped you fill the world of Vantage with fun side games? Maybe subconsciously. I designed Rolling Realms after I started working on Vantage, but probably around the time that I was starting to think about some of the mini games in Vantage. So yeah, that might have had some impact on it. It is a great design challenge, I would say, to try to fit all the rules for a mini game like in Rolling Realms or like in Vantage into a very small space, into like 1 or 2 sentences if possible. I see some people who are excited about the Vantage, Destination X Vantage idea. Tony says, your real-world consultants comments made me wonder, how do you make these connections and what are the negotiations like for their participation? Sometimes I put out words to Stonemaier ambassadors. Sometimes I hear from people who are, like when we released Wingspan, I heard a lot of enthusiasm from marine biologists. And so for some of them, especially if they already knew Wingspan, then I was like, we're looking for people who are willing to offer their expertise for Wingspan. And I wouldn't say there's really a negotiation, but I offer compensation for their time and their expertise. Let's see, I have a few other, okay, so it was Morgan who mentioned Maricopa Con before as well. Well, keep repeating more, not more. I always think it's different people every time. I guess a few other quick comments, but before I finish on questions for the day. One, again, I'll say that the Positively Board Gaming podcast will be live for the first time this Friday on this YouTube channel at 3:30. 3:30 Central Time. So if you want to join us live and talk enthusiastically about anything related to board games or treats, join us 3:30 on YouTube this Friday. Some games I played this past week. We had a food themed game night where we played Point Salad, we played New York Slice, and then we ended it with No Thanks, which is not food themed, but still a lot of fun. Inkborn. Inkborn is the digital roguelike deck builder that I've been consulting on, and the early access version of the game is now available. I played it for a couple hours this weekend and had a blast with it. I still think there are like a few little things they can add, and they're certainly looking to grow the game. But if you want to get in early on the game, I've had a lot of fun with it. Hopefully you can see some of my influence on the game. For the most part, my consulting influence has been very small. They put a lot of work into it. This is Acram Digital, the folks that did Charterstone Digital. But yeah, check out Inkborn on Steam. It's available right now in early access. Also, we are watching Squid Game. What are the two shows? We're watching 2 shows right now. We're watching $1 Million Secret, which is our competition show right now that we're watching. And we're also watching Squid Game, both of which I might do videos on at some point to talk about the game design of Squid Game and the game design of $1 Million Secret. Last, also, I think I mentioned last week that Disc Golf Worlds, one of the major disc golf tournaments in the world, just finished. It was held in Finland. And the final, if you get the chance to watch like the final day of men's and women's, they are both thrilling. Even if you just watch like the 10-minute highlight reel or 15-minute highlight reel, they're thrilling, they're emotional. It's really incredible disc golf to watch for Disc Golf Worlds this year. Let's see. Geert says, your Destination X idea reminds me of the game GeoGuessr. Have you played that? I have not played GeoGuessr. No. Some YouTubers are very good at it, and it's fun to watch. I'll have to check that out. No, I have not played that one. Charles says, sometimes I hear when people design games, they make the game they want to play because it doesn't exist. How should I tackle that first? Interesting question. I think so. Yeah. So oftentimes, so Charles, if you've ever played a game or played a bunch of games and you're like, this isn't quite hitting what I want out of a game. Like there's a game that I want to play, and this game, as far as I know, does not exist. I think that's a great motivation to try to design a game, to design something unique and innovative that does not already exist. But I would also pair that with doing a lot of research, playing a lot of games, watching a lot of videos and listening to a lot of podcasts, reading a lot of blogs about games, because there are so many games that already exist. the game that you might want to exist might already exist. In fact, I would say the odds are fairly good that it already exists. So that's why I encourage people to do a lot of research and to talk openly about the idea that they have. I know it's tough to talk openly about an idea because you're worried that someone might steal that idea, but I can assure you, ideas aren't really worth all that much. It is the execution that is worth everything. So you can save yourself a lot of time if you share the type of game that you're hoping to exist, because someone might say it actually already does exist, and we can bring it to life right now. Let's see. George says, what was your most memorable dinner on the cruise ship in Norway? Most memorable dinner. We had a really beautiful dinner in Norway when we were exiting one of the fjords, and just the scenery of being that close to the edge of so many rolling hills and little houses and towns built on the edge of these I'll call them hills, like mountain/hills that slope right into the water. It was just like the scenery was beautiful throughout this dinner. So for that particular one, it was the food was also memorable. It was a good Italian restaurant. We ordered a lot of appetizers, maybe too many appetizers, but the scenery in particular was really, really beautiful. Chad says the Vantage sentients are so interesting and well thought out. Would it be possible to have them in future games? I guess it's possible. I'm not thinking about the future for Vantage right now. I'm just trying to enjoy the present. But I'm glad you enjoy the sentience that you can find, or the different things that you can find throughout the world of Vantage. Garrett says there's a really interesting game on Steam called Locator. Garrett, I think you've mentioned this game to me in the past. I played the demo a bit ago. Not sure if it's in full release, but I really think you would like it. And you have recommended it. I'm sorry I haven't played it yet, but I do hope to play Locator at some point. Let me make sure it's on my to playlist for digital games. Locator. I actually don't know if it's there. Sorry, Garrett, didn't make a note of it, but I have made a note of it now. Monkey Butler Lab says, understanding wanting to keep screens out of the game for Vantage. Are you finding the choice paying off enough to offset the ease and speed of the Rule Pop app? The time difference isn't minor. I still think that the time difference is pretty minimal between looking something up in the storybook and typing it into Rule Pop. It is. I agree that it is slightly faster in Rule Pop, but I think the time is pretty minimal, especially if you're playing multiplayer. I honestly, at this point, I am fine with people playing either way, and I appreciate Rule Pop being there for the accessibility. You can make the text bigger, you can zoom in, so that's helpful for people, and because it gives us the chance to correct minor mistakes on the fly. So I don't want to lean on that. I don't want to make excuses for the mistakes to use Rule Pop or use errata or anything like that, but I'm grateful that it exists. I'll say that. I did play with it for the first time recently, and it was a great experience. It was nice to have a little iPad set up with Rule Pop on the table. I did not see, Chet says, did you see Big Germ slip on the tee box? I did not see that, no, but I hope he's okay. Let's see. I think we actually caught up on comments and questions here. Yeah. Well, I'm happy to answer any other questions as we're wrapping up here. I'll see if I have a question for you. Edward says, what is more likely to get published? A game with a strong, unique hook, but okay gameplay, or a game with strong gameplay, but no great hook? I think publishers are more likely to consider a game with a strong hook, because you got to hook them. You got to get them in the door. And then you have to follow that up with great gameplay. The hook gets your foot in the door, not just for the publisher, but I also think for the gamers, for people who are looking for games. There's so many options out there that I think there needs to be something to hook them in. But I think the game needs to be supported by really, really strong gameplay as well. So I honestly, I have to say both, Edward. I think both are really, really necessary. I know that's tough. I know that's not an entirely fair answer, but that's the point of it. Like, I don't think every game should be published. And I think the games that should be published are the ones that have both the hook and the gameplay, that have both of them. It's okay to design a game that only has one of the two, but you don't necessarily have to pursue publishing for it. You can learn from it and then focus on the game that has the hook and the strong gameplay to actually publish that one. Charles echoes, he says, I love the no app experience advantage, but I thank you for the app. My family with reading difficulties have been able to use it with their text-to-speech programs to tell the stories for them. That's great, Charles, and I appreciate you sharing that. And really credit to Jans at RulePop for creating it so quickly. It's been really incredible to work with him on the RulePop app. Paul says, with Vantage being so art sensitive, there are 1,600 unique illustrations in Vantage. How did you go about designing the cards for people to interact with? Did you make sketches, write up descriptions of the cards, or did the art come first? The art largely came first. I would go to one of the artists, Emilian, Valentina, and Soren, and I would say, I would like there to be a jungle biome, for example, in Vantage. Can you make a jungle biome that is around 25 locations? And early on, especially, I would say just make it make it a really cool place to explore. Make sure there's something of focus on every location, every single location, but overall make it a fun place to explore that is cohesive. And then we kind of layered on things from there. We found certain things that we wanted scattered throughout the world in different places, so we would add those to the locations. So kind of the specificity of different items, different things that you can find throughout the world, not just items. We kind of layered on layer, but for the most part, we were just building a planet that was exciting and fun and made sense, and where there was something interesting on every single location. Andy says, I'm sure this has been answered elsewhere, but I'm suddenly idly curious why it's Stonemaier Games and not Stonemaier Games. So I was working on viticulture for a few months, our first game, and it was just me. And I was playtesting with friends, subjecting them to playtesting a game that wasn't working very well at that point. And one of those friends was my friend, Alan Stone. And after I playtested it with him, Alan actually came back to me and said, Jamey, I actually had a lot of fun playtesting that. I'd love to work on this more with you. And that I wasn't looking for a partner in the company. The company didn't have a name at the time. It wasn't really even a company. It was just a game that I was designing to put on Kickstarter. But I found that I was really nice to have someone who was actually excited to playtest a game with me, and that formed our partnership. Alan and I, and so Alan's last name is Stone, my last name is Stonemaier, and we decided to combine the names together to form Stonemaier Games. I wrote actually, Andy, fairly recently, maybe a couple months ago, I wrote an article about choosing a company name and some reasons why I think maybe Stonemaier Games it's a good name, good solid name. Maybe it isn't the completely ideal name that I would have chosen, but I wouldn't have chosen Stonemaier Games. I wouldn't have made it. I've tried not to make this all about me because even though I'm kind of the face of the company in some ways on channels like this, Susanna is the face for localization partners and retailers. Alex is the face for distributors and our logistic partners. Joe and Dave are faces for replacement parts and customer service. Erica is the face for Amazon. So I've tried not to make the company is not intended to be all about Jamey. It's about my coworkers. It's about us. It's about our games. It's about you. But yeah, the origin is the combination of the name Stonemaier and Stonemaier. Maddie, I did see your comment the other day, and I really appreciate you noticing something very specific about the types of wording that we made when talking about the people of the world in Vantage. It was very intentional. I appreciate you highlighting that and noticing that. And yeah, I think I don't know if I'll do a video on it, Maddie, but what I'm hoping to do is for future Vantage updates, I'd like to go into a topic that is more full of spoilers, and talk about the design process for those things, because I was very vague about those things leading up to Vantage's release. Now I feel more comfortable saying that there are people on this planet, and talking about some of the process of creating them and how the language that we use to describe them and things like that. So I think there will be some Vantage updates about those topics and places to then talk about those topics. And you're right. I guess you're right that a video provides a nice focused forum to talk about something. So maybe I'll do some more videos as well. Let's see. Aaron says, how are the illustrations divided between the illustrators? For Soren and Valentina, they were the two illustrators that created the biomes of the world. And so I would say, okay, Valentina's working on the jungle right now. So Soren, do you want to work on a desert biome? So it's kind of based on availability. And then Emelian came in, and Emelian did a lot of the cards that you discover in the game. Emelian also did some specific locations that I don't want to spoil here, but he did work on some of them. But he was mainly focused on kind of populating the world with stuff. And some of those illustrations were then brought into the location illustrations. I know that doesn't really fully answer your question, Aaron, but it was, we worked on building this world full of visuals for years and years. So it was often based on who's available at this time to do this, or who do I think is a good fit of these three artists to make this type of illustration. Tim says, what's your opinion of dexterity games such as Ice School, Crokinole, and Flick 'em Up? Is there a dexterity game that you feel is a good mix of skill and strategy? I would say, Tim, I do enjoy dexterity games. I particularly enjoy Crokinole. I think that's a really, really fun dexterity game. I also have a few on my shelf. I don't have many dexterity games, but I have like Nekojima, the Isle of Cats game. Probably have one or two more. They aren't games that I play all that often, but I always have fun when I'm playing a dexterity game. And Crokinole is probably my go-to. I don't know if there's a ton of strategy in it, but there is a little bit when you take aim at something over something else. Yeah, that's a good question. Anyone else is welcome to answer that question as well, of course. Evan has a rules question for Vantage. Can you perform card actions more than once, even on back-to-back turns over and over? You can. Yeah, the restriction for actions is only for location actions. You can only perform one location action per location per game, but that's only for location actions. So that restriction is not there for other types of cards. But that is, Evan, that's a good question that is asked a lot, and so maybe I need to highlight that more in one of these common mistakes types of things. I'll make a note about that. Well, thank you, Leona. Leona says, I love the diversity you put into the Vantage characters. Thanks. I appreciate you saying that. That was intentional. Yeah, for sure. Garrett says, your existential, am I Jamey Stonemaier? Quote from that article. This is the article about why we chose the name Stonemaier Games and if we should have chosen that name. Thanks, Garrett. Catacombs gets some mentions here. Oh, here we go. Paul mentions Catacombs as his favorite dexterity games. Chris mentions Hokey. I have not played that. It's kind of like Clue, but with letters and no maps. So I immediately loved it. I have not played that, but I've never even heard of that one, Chris, but I appreciate you mentioning it. All right. Well, I now have a note to go add to the Vantage FAQ. I appreciate the question. I appreciate all of you for hanging out for the last hour. Thank you for hanging out. I really appreciate that. And if you have any other questions that you think of after this, actually, I have two more questions. I'll answer these questions real quick before I go. But if you have any other questions after this, post them in the comments of YouTube, and I'm happy to answer there. Mark says, have I played Pitch Car? I have, but it's been a long time. And Fairly Odd Parent says, is there no way to add boost cubes to cards that don't inherently have the option printed on them from the squares? In most cases, yes. There are actions on the cards that where if you perform some of those actions might say add a boost, and that means add a boost on this card. But there are a few rare mistakes where there is no way to add boost to the card, and that's just a mistake. And check the errata for that, because there might be a mention in the errata. If there's no mention of it in the errata, it means that it's either that's probably in one of the actions that you could take on that card. Samwise also has a nice comment to end the live cast. Just finished my third game of Vantage with my son last night. I've never played anything like Vantage before and been completely amazed. Thank you for putting your love and care into this game. And I'll end on that note, Samwise. That was very kind of you to say. A lot of care and love and Vantage, and I'm really, really glad that you and your son are enjoying it. On that note, I hope you all have a great day, a great Wednesday. I will see you hopefully for the live recording, 3:30 Central Time this Friday for the Positively Board Gaming podcast. Hopefully I'll see you then. Take care.